The good news is Florence has slowed down. What does that mean? You have time. Heed the warnings, make a plan, execute it, get out if you were directed to do so. The bad news, slowing down has allowed this storm to expand. So right now, it's roughly 300 miles off the southeast coast of Wilmington, North Carolina. Locals have cleared out to a large degree, some hunkering down. Take a look at this new video. This is inside the eye of the storm, okay? This is that calm area with like hell on all sides, right? The Air Force flying right into it, gathering weather data for the National Hurricane Center to provide all of us with the most accurate information about this monster storm. That takes us to Brett Adair. He's a storm chaser extraordinaire and field meteorologist. Joins us right now from Wilmington. Now, you're there. Thank you. Be safe. Because that's where we expected to be the main hit from landfall. But now we see a turn, we see an increase in size. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, Chris, we've been watching this thing all day with Hurricane Center updates, and we've been watching the live Air Force reconnaissance going in, checking the storm out. To us, basically, a stall out on the coastline would be a worst-case situation because you're going to see those hurricane force impacts be felt here in Wilmington and along the beaches here for a much longer period of time, as well as that inland heavy rainfall threat. Plus, you've got the storm surge, and then you've got the waves on top of the storm surge. So we're very concerned for this area, no doubt.
What's next for you in terms of what you want to see with this storm?
Well, Chris, we're really just monitoring the situation. We want everyone here to understand just because we have seen maybe what they would call a weakening of the storm, just because the winds are down below 120 miles an hour, that means nothing. This storm is massive. It is much larger than Hugo was when it hit this area in '89. It's larger than Hazel was when it hit in '54, and those are the two benchmark storms for the Carolinas. So just because you're seeing a little bit of a weakening in the winds doesn't mean that those wind fields aren't growing larger and going to affect a more larger landmass. So, you know, this is still a very serious storm, a very dangerous threat as we go into the next couple of days.
All right, I got Sam Champion here. What do you have for Brett Adair?
So, Brett, I think you made a huge point for these people because there's only one time that I have ever been forced out of a shelter, and that was a Category 1 storm, Brett, and it's exactly what you just said, is that it stayed over us for 20 hours. So the building was fine and secure. The windows were great. The roof was fine. This was a great place to be for the storm. But 20 hours of being in a blender took the windows out, took the walls down, took the roof out. It's the kind of thing that prolonged damage, it can be worse than just that initial hit. So, Brett, are you hearing that people are relaxing a little bit now, or are they still on point with the watches and warnings in the area?
Oh, everybody's still paying a lot of attention to the situation, Sam. Most of the folks that we talked to here that were on the immediate coastline were absolutely going to heed those evacuation orders and get out. Some of the more interior people, you know, they were getting all the supplies, the generators, the fuel. But again, like you said, if this storm sits here for 24 hours, even longer, you've got the freshwater flooding threat that you could get trapped, along with that wind damage threat, the surge threat. All that water from the Atlantic's going to go up the rivers and into the inlets. Where's it going to go? It's going to spill out on the land.
And water that you can't use. So if you're stuck, you don't have potable water. You're just sitting and waiting, and you're putting a ton of stress on the first responders. And we know how that story goes. Brett, be safe. I'll be checking in with you. I'm going to be down there later tonight. I'm sure we'll meet up at some point, okay? Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. You know, the story, there's a story in a lot of the science. So you and I are covering a storm. Well, we covered like 100 storms, but we are, I think we're in Superstorm Sandy. And I'm standing somewhere, and you say, we have to leave. We're in downtown Manhattan. I was like, no, it's not that bad.
Yeah, we're in Battery Park City.
And you say, no, it's duration. We can't take this level of rain for this long with this wind. We're going to get stuck. Cut to 2 hours later, we're staring at my brother across
in that big Humvee thing.
Across the West Side Highway, and we were trapped on top of a van and then inside the van for the entire night, and it happened like that.
Yeah, and that's storm surge. And again, we can't tell you exactly where the storm surge is going to set up. That was an 11-foot wall of water that moved across the area that we were, and that water came up so quickly that nobody could even get out. The same thing will happen in some part of the coastline here, and what I want people who are seasoned, you know, North Carolinians, South Carolinians who have lived there forever and been through storms. Storm surge is the thing you can't beat. You might be able to protect yourself from the wind, but the storm surge will take you, the building, whatever you're in, with it, and you'll be gone. So that's the one game you don't want to play. And then the second game I don't like here is the freshwater flooding. All of that flooding inland. Chris, there's so many people who just won't be able to take this and will lose everything in the kind of flooding that we have the potential of having with this storm.
2 points. The first is you think you can do it, but you can't. Again, to that Superstorm Sandy. I wanted to try to swim across. And you were like, yeah, you go ahead. Try to make it to your brother. Let me just have your mother on the phone because you're never going to make it. There are cars and telephone poles and everything going with it.
That water's not what you want to get in.
The second thing is the difference between the word hurricane and flooding. We use them together all the time. It's common sense. It should. That's not how the economics works. Put up the graphic of how many people have flood insurance under the program in the Carolinas. All right, the numbers are small, but let me just take you through it. Sam directed me to this earlier today as a big factor. Dark colors along the coast. You'll see numbers there of somewhere between 20 to 35, a little north of that percent, people have flood insurance. They have hurricane insurance, but they don't have flood insurance. And once you move inland, it's in the single digits in most places. Now, how does that play out in a storm like this?
Horrifying. And this, kudos to my friend Paul Walsh, who is, he handles the business of weather. And so he's always looking for this kind of thing. What does it mean economically? And this surprised even me, Chris. I kind of figured that coastal areas would have that kind of insured flood protection. But I really expected more inland areas. So a lot of people, since we have put this out on Twitter, have talked about it. And they've said, yeah, we don't have flood insurance in the area, or we've had a problem getting, when storms have come before, we had a problem getting paid out for flood insurance, so we didn't pick it up again. This is the hard thing. Look, insurance companies don't like to pay out. We all know that. They're going to make it difficult for you to get money back from this.
And time is on their side.
And time is on their side.
Because you want to get paid, because waiting is literally delaying your life.
Right. So if your house is not livable, where are you going to live while you're waiting to get the check? But the problem here in not having it is that this is going to fall on the backs of people who really just can't take that. If you lose your home, you lose your car, you lose the way you can get to work, you lose the clothes that your kids wear to school, you lose everything. And how do you make that up? You know, so that's the problem in these areas in North Carolina, inland areas. And I'm concerned about this all the way to the mountains and beyond. Even some of this heavy rain in North Georgia, Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, southern Ohio, and as Tom pointed out, now we're looking at this thing maybe spinning around back up toward New England, carrying some of that heavy rain in the same areas where the moisture from Gordon just went through. So the ground is saturated. This is going to flood like that.
And by the way, this isn't the only storm in the area.
Right.
Right? You're keeping your eyes on something in the Gulf, 2 or 3 others that are in a cluster coming off the African coast?
A lot of people are going to need to know about what is a landfalling system, could be a hurricane or a tropical storm in the Caribbean, the Central Caribbean. And then the other thing, look at the 70% zone. That isn't named yet, but it is in the Gulf, and the Gulf is a perfect area to develop storms.
What does that mean, 70% zone?
70% means that they believe it's got a high probability of becoming a tropical storm or a developed tropical system.
It's not named yet.
Right, it's not named yet. But they look at it and they give it is it a 10% chance, a 30% chance it'll develop? This has been increasing. And the Gulf is like an incubator for storms. It's perfect for them to develop. So Texas, South Texas has had a lot of flooding lately. Can't take a system like this. Houston, well, we all know the stories last year and flooding from Houston. Houston and North Texas has had a lot of rain as well. This will be a huge problem. Even if it doesn't develop, if it just moves onshore exactly like it is, this is a lot of rain for Texas. They need to be ready for this.
It's one of the things that's frustrating about what did we learn from last year? Duration of precipitation, not just to rhyme, is a real problem. That was Harvey. Irma, you forget about the strength of the storm. It changes direction, and it hangs out places that you didn't expect it to. It's devastating. We learned that just last year.
Yeah, and we'll see exactly the same thing with this storm. And again, people tend to forget because inland folks don't deal with storms like this a lot. But we'll have tornadoes, we'll have severe thunderstorms, we'll have flooding, and they'll be dealing with it for days. There'll be power outages, most likely, hundreds of miles away from the shoreline just because of this system.
Sam Champion, nobody does it better. Thank you for helping me once again.